As many of you know already, my brother is severely autistic. He has epilepsy and a condition called tuberous sclerosis. Because of this, he's considered non-verbal. He doesn't speak much, but he does still say words because he has a condition called echolalia, meaning that words are repeated after they've been heard, but they might be out of context and they might refer to different things. For example, if my brother has heard the words "it's Jane" from a TV show while he's hungry, then one day when he's hungry he might say "it's Jane." Or same with sounds, smells, any different associations. He's got epilepsy as well, like I said, which when we were younger used to give him a lot of fits. He used to have up to 21 epileptic fits a day. Now the fits are controlled because of the medication that he's on, but the medication does make him very drowsy. I want to talk about this because there's so much I want to say about autism, and I don't think there's enough of a conversation going on, especially from siblings of non-verbal autistic people, adults. The reason I want to focus mainly on non-verbal people is because I think life is very different for high-functioning and verbal autistic people. I'm not saying it's easy, it's still really hard and there's challenges and all that kind of thing, but it is more possible for these people to be able to integrate into society and have more of a sense of independence. Whereas I think when people are non-verbal, it does make it a lot harder for them to integrate. Quite often people like my brother end up in homes and institutions where they get looked after, even though they still have a quality of life. They aren't able to make as many of their own decisions and that kind of thing. My brother lives in a home right now. He's been living in this particular care home for quite a few years now, about 5 years. He's happy there, he's settled there. He lives with 2 other people with similar conditions to himself, who are both considered non-verbal as well. The carers are amazing. I think that the home is great. He's very lucky to be where he is. We used to live in a few different countries, some in Asia, and definitely over here in Asia, which is where I am now. It's hard, you know, like people don't still understand enough about autism, and there's a lot of stigma, and it's difficult for people to find the right resources to have the learning that they need from a young age, the care. There's still not enough education for families and for teachers and for carers. We're very lucky to have been able to move to the UK, to have been able to go to a residential school and to get the care that he did get and the care that he gets now. However, I'm nearly 30. My brother is 2 years younger than me. So when we were younger, there really wasn't enough of education back then. People didn't know what autism was, you know. So pretty much every time when we'd go out, we would encounter people staring. My brother would make noises, people would laugh, people would call him names, people would make comments to my parents saying, "You don't know how to control your son." They'd look at them like they were bad parents. People would stare and just not stop staring. I used to get so angry and rageful. I used to lash out at strangers, and I felt like I always had to defend my brother and defend us as a family. That's how we grew, you know. There wasn't that much education at the time, and so we were lucky to receive the help and the input that we did for the age group that we are. And nowadays in 2023 there is so much more going on. Like there's a lot more early intervention for people, there's a lot more research going on, there's so much more awareness globally, which is awesome. And there's still more work that needs to be done. So that's why I want to have this conversation. People often say when they learn about someone like my brother, they often say, okay, maybe he's like Rain Man, or what's his superpower, or You know, quite often people also say, I'm so sorry, and whilst that is valid, and I appreciate that in some way, to have some kind of understanding, actually, specifically the autism, I don't see the autism as an illness. It's just a different way of being and a different way of looking at the world. Like someone with a different coloured eyes or different colour hair, you're not gonna say, or is from a different country, you know, it's a different perspective. So for example, if someone was to say, oh, I'm French, and then someone was to say, oh, I'm so sorry about that, you know, in terms of autism, it's not something that people need to be sorry for. Like, actually, this is where the thinking needs to change. Autism is an amazing state of being, you know. Yeah, it's difficult, and I'm not autistic, so I can only speak from the point of view of a sibling. I do think that we need to change our mindset about autism, and only when this mindset really changes are we going to be able to create new systems in the world for this growing number of people in the world. Going back to what I was saying, people often say, oh, you know, I'll tell people my brother's severely autistic, he's considered nonverbal. People often say, oh, like, what's his superpower, or what's his special interest, or, you know, is he like Rain Man, things like this. And actually, in reality, yes, there are people who are severely autistic who also have savant syndrome, or they are particularly hyper-focused and high-functioning in an area of their special interest, that they're able to do something amazing that most people can't. I'm talking about having a photographic memory, being able to calculate things very fast, being able to remember the weather 20 years before on a random date, things like that. Okay, yeah, there are people that can do that, but it's very rare. So please, let's stop assuming that just because someone is severely autistic that they have some kind of special power or some kind of ability like Rain Man, okay? Because that's not necessarily the case. And it can be tiring as well for people to say that. Quite often I don't have the energy to explain that to people every single time. Hence why I want to come and make these videos about it. The reality is that my brother loves to spin things. He loves everything to do with infinity. He loves fans, he loves tops, he loves washing machines, he loves lifts that go up and down, he loves mechanisms, he loves cars, he loves specifically the door of the car and the way it opens and the noise it makes, and the feeling that it makes when you shut the door. He loves all these different things, okay? They do have things in common. So I've noticed that the things that my brother likes quite often are to do with dynamic movement of some kind, sensory impact, whether it's making a sound or creating a feeling or a sensation. Being a sibling to someone like my brother has been challenging. It's also a real blessing because he's given me such a different insight into the world. He has taught me all my life what it's like to be different and what it's like to stand out. He's taught me how to not care too much what people think about you and to forge your own path and to be strong in that and to value those things that make you different. He's given me an insight into a different perspective of the world, which is something so invaluable. He's shown me something that no one else in the whole world has been able to show me. No school, no university, no different country has been able to give me the insight into the perspective of the world that he has. My brother's able to use his senses in a completely different way. In a way, he is hypersensory. So that's why he needs ear defenders. That's why he likes to wear sunglasses sometimes, because his senses are so sensitive that it can be too much sometimes. And so for me, my senses, I use my senses in a different way. So it's amazing to have that insight and to try and understand a different way of being, you know. I think that, like I said, in this day and age, specifically in countries like the UK, there is so much more happening in terms of education about autism, in terms of awareness, in terms of education to families, carers, and facilities. I think there is a lot more happening, which is awesome. However, we've still got a long way to go by far, and this is what I want to talk about. I think that there is a need for adults to be able to access services like free speech and language therapy, or, provided on the NHS, occupational therapy. I think this needs to be more specialized. There needs to be more education into nonverbal autism and more research going on specifically into nonverbal autism. Facilities need to be more specialized. We've had products coming out, more sensory products coming out, like fidget spinners, sensory toys. I feel that there is a need for these sensory toys to be integrated into sensory rooms, and so many homes and care facilities and schools don't even have a sensory room. More sensory rooms need to be there. Kids and adults need to be able to access more sensory rooms. What about public sensory rooms? Sensory installations available at public spaces like parks and bus stops, or even cafes. Also public education. There does need to be more public education around autism, specifically nonverbal autism, and the surrounding conditions that can quite often be present, like epilepsy and tuberous sclerosis. More investment needs to be happening into these services for people. If I had £1 million, I would build those things. I would work with designers, architects, engineers, put more sensory rooms, more facilities into homes, into hospitals, into public spaces. Like I said, those are the things that I would invest in. Specifically the research and giving autistic people a voice. There are rare cases of nonverbal autistic people around the world being able to have a voice, to give us more of an insight into their perception and into their world. For example, the book The Reason I Jump is a great example of this. I will put the details in the comments and in the info below. Bear with me, this is my first video, so yeah, there are people who have been given that voice, and that needs to happen more. Those rare cases like Temple Grandin in America, these people were able to have their voice because they were able to access those services early on in life, and those people were determined. They fought for those people to have that say, and that's what I want to do for my brother too, and for all the other people in the world that are this way. It's amazing how people can share, and the perception is still in such an old way of thinking. Like, so many people think just because this person can't reply to you and respond to you, do you not think they're still a human being with complex emotions and deep insights about the world? Just because they can't speak or they can't respond doesn't mean they're dumb. It doesn't mean that they don't understand. So don't think that, just because they can't think back, that they are not listening to you and that they don't need respect from you, just like every human being on this earth, regardless of their perception and their state of being. I believe it's never too late for people like my brother to have interventions, to have access to services, to have research done into their way of being and opportunities for these people. I believe it's never too late for these things to help people to grow, help people to communicate in their own ways. Some people might be able to communicate using an alphabet grid. Some people might be able to communicate using Makaton. Some people might be able to communicate using an AC, alternative communication method, or, machinery. Everyone's different. This is the thing. this is what we need to get our heads around. There's not one size fits all. There's not one answer for these services that needs to happen. You know, the diversity in the services is crucial because we are a diverse people. We are a diverse community all over the world. Everyone's so different, and we need that. Different, not less, you know. I want to put this out there and just reach out to all of my community all over the world who have a non-verbal autistic person in their life, whether it's a sibling or a child or a cousin or anything, even a parent or even a friend. I want to reach out and say, please, let's work together to find the right resources for our people and to share these resources and to keep on fighting towards the change and the freedom and the truth that we all need. Love you so much. Thanks for watching. Peace.